Okay, so today, guys, we are back with another episode of Punt or No Punt, and today I am delighted to welcome AlanFPoker. Alan, how you doing, lad?
I'm good right now, bro. We'll see how this unfolds in terms of how I feel by the end of it. But right now, I feel pretty good and I'm pretty excited and obviously grateful to be on this as well, bro. I've watched these before. I've always found it entertaining. So yeah, feel pretty privileged, to be honest. And thanks so much for letting that happen.
Privileged. It's an honor to have you on, lad. I've been watching your stream for a while and your YouTube content, guys. If you don't know Alan, do you want to give a little insight into who you are if people don't know who you are?
Yeah, so started streaming probably a year ago. I think it was around that time frame. I think it's around the 12-month anniversary at this point. And I'm part of Metagame stable. If you guys don't know who that is, it's a Brazilian company. And they're very MDA based in terms of strategy. So I've been working with them probably, 3 years. I'd say 3 years plus at this stage. I'm a coach for them. Kind of joined them when I was playing 50NL and mostly playing 500NL right now, with hopefully shot in 1K sooner rather than later. So yeah, handpicked these hands for you guys that hopefully have some back and forth between myself and Nick. So yeah, that's pretty much who I am. Bro.
Yeah. So yeah, all of Alan's links will be in the description below. We are hopefully looking for some other guys. If you don't know Metagame, like he said, very MDA based and Saulo Costa heavily involved. Yep, so we're hoping for some very interesting, maybe outside of theory based hands. We'll see. I've never seen these hands before. And that is one thing that I do like to say. Disclaimer, Alan, you're happy that I've not seen these hands before we begin the show today?
100%. There was a little bit of an issue with the hand issues getting them sent over, but I can verify that Nick has definitely not seen the showdowns or know the outcome of these hands itself.
Beautiful.
Sure.
And as per the rules, guys, as you'll know, contestant today, it's Alan. We'll bring on 5 hands. I will decide, regardless of the skill gap between myself and the guest, I will decide whether the hand is a punt or no punt. At the end, we'll have a winner. Either Alan is a punter or he will come out victorious. We will have to see. But we have, I believe, mostly 200L, a little bit of 500L on the 5th hand for you as well. And without further ado, Alan, are you ready to play punt or no punt?
100%, bro. Looking forward to it, as I said already.
Let's go. Okay, so hand number 1, Alan, we have 10-9 of clubs on the button, and it is going... Oh, so all GG, you say, these hands?
As far as I remember, yeah. As far as I remember.
Okay, and we're going to 3-bet the button. Obviously, you're going to be doing a little bit of that and a little bit of call, I imagine.
Yeah, so my strategy in this situation, man, is mostly playing 3-bet or fold. I don't know. I won't say probably until the river who the player type was, whether he was a recreational or a fish. I think the line will probably define that anyways in terms of how I may or may not have played it. Probably for the most part in these formations, playing 3-bet or fold. As I said, I don't incorporate much of a cold calling range here, bar from the big blinds, versus a raise first in. Primarily just 3-betting from any position outside of that. Yeah.
Is that because the rake's... Are you playing 200 Russian cash? Is that because the rake's really high?
Yeah, the thing is, there's going to be some back and forth between this. You're paying rake pre-flop in these situations anyways, so probably you're a little bit more incentivized to cold call. But just for simplification of strategy, bro, like me cold calling on the button, I just have not spent much time investing in post-flop kind of strategies and just getting better with awareness and stuff like that. So, more so simplification than, adjusting to the rake overall, I think.
Okay. Fair enough. So are you unaware at this point whether it's a recreational or reg, or do you know if you do know that it is?
I do remember. I'll talk about it in detail in terms of when we should do X and Y pre-flop, because I think that's important as well, because making these post-flop and pre-flop deviations based on certain profiles, in my opinion, is very important, what you should be doing. Yeah, for sure. Compared to like what you should be calling, static ranges with GTO and shit like that. Okay.
They go for a 4-bet.
Yeah.
And I guess this mostly calls once they do this?
Yeah. So again, like that, man, the way we categorize some player profiles, some players in terms of regs will under 4-bet, and we have different categories of kind of when we kind of, defend GTO, maybe overfold a little bit more versus certain player profile tendencies. If this is a reg, we'll say, again, certain kind of tendencies in terms of like, post-flop stats, pre-flop, we're going to over or under adjust. So I might as well just say in this example that this guy was a reg, because if this was a recreational, no way in hell I am ever calling a 4-bet, mostly because fish just don't 4-bet bluff, bro, primarily. Okay?
Makes sense. We're going to take the flop, which is 9 king 7 with a club. Not the worst, not the best in a 4-bet pot, but we're certainly not going to be falling to 1-bet. So we see this bet. I can't see any reason to do anything but call. No Saulo-y things going on here, I hope.
Probably unlikely. I wouldn't be surprised from an exploit standpoint to actually have some raises here, because I think people are just going to see bet primarily with range in a lot of situations. I'm not saying it's a mistake, to have that as a strategy here because population are going to overfold and they are going to underraise, so you get to realize equity more often because of that. But yeah, given I'm in position here, bro, primarily just call, and I don't think I ever raised this combo most of the time, if ever.
Yeah, and if you raise and get shoved on, it's like...
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so we do call. Nothing much to say there. We turn a straight draw, and they go for another bet. Certainly extremely reasonable. They just have a lot of very, obviously, strong hands. Ace, king, aces. A lot of the time. Kings, obviously. And they're supposed to have pocket nines here, I think, as well, if I remember correctly. But we have a 9. That's good. And I think we can only call again. I can't see any reason to do anything else. We can't fold, obviously, with the gut shot. We can assume that probably a 10 and a 9 are going to be good almost all the time as well as an 8. Anything to say? Or are we just calling?
With this exact combo, I would mostly just call. There's one thing I want to highlight here based on MDA, and as I said, I'm kind of going to be an open book with this, bro, that like some of these hands like this actually are not bad to actually just jam on the turn here. And I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but the kind of bet folds, we'll say when they double barrel in these situations, they're actually overfolding quite a bit versus jams, especially when they bet small, bet small. Now, I'm not saying that we just want to get out of line with this hand. I think only calling with this combo is completely fine. But I think if you had something like Jack 10 of spades or some of these kind of combo draws that, again, being in position is calling is completely fine. But from a more exploit possibility of them overfolding, being more aggressive with these draws can be a good play as well. I think something like 5-6 of spades will be a good combo to do this with as well, because he's going to have some ace-x of spades that would kind of maybe have to bet call this off. Not all the time, but you get where I'm going with this in terms of perception of knowing that this will be overfolded on average when they bet twice for the smaller sizing. That, jamming some pair plus draw here or just some like combo draw in general is going to be a good strategy. But with this hand combo specifically, I think calling is the only play.
So if you did have like 6-5 of spades, would you, I mean, we're a little bit deeper, would you be shoving or would you like use any smaller sizes?
I think smaller sizings here are good, bro. But as I said, more so from 100 big blind effective, I think that strategy is going to be a little bit more better. Arguably, when people are a little bit deeper, I don't think they 4-bet correctly pre-flop. So there might be an issue post-flop in terms of getting a little bit out of line. Again, this will be all very much based on who I think the reg profile is in terms of post-flop tendencies. Lower win soft flop, I'm never going to take that line against them, but someone with a higher win soft flop who's going to be more aggressive, I think we can start making some deviations like that and just try and attack that overfold itself. But, EV-wise here between either decision is going to be completely fine overall.
Sounds good. We do call, which we've established is completely fine. There's a river's the jack of spades, and they go for a check. Now, obviously, we're playing punt or no punt, so almost certainly going to be wagering the money here. First things first, I guess we would say, do we show down often enough to outweigh the amount of folds we get from better hands? What do you think?
So this is the question I ask myself exactly in this moment as well. I kind of spoke with this hand about it with a couple of people as well. And, it's one of those things where I think if he has any combo of ace queen or ace 10, probably not having ace 10 offsuit, for example, but ace queen, he will have as a 4-bet bluff here. Yeah. So the only combos that we're really ahead of there, bro, is going to be ace queen offsuit, possibly without a spade. I think all combos of ace queen offsuit with a spade is just going to bet.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought about that in the moment that, he has a lot of hands that take this line that want to check on this river that we actually don't beat, in my opinion. So it's kind of very, very close between one option and the other. But I think the kind of bet on the river here outweighs the check in here. I will talk in more detail when you guys see, but I assume what's going to happen here anyways. Yeah.
I mean, I think we win I think it's clear that we win non-zero on the river if we check. Okay. I think that's clear. We're going to be ace 5, and there might be some ace queen. There might be something going on, but I think you're right in general that we're going to lose most of the time when we check back. Certainly most of the time, and I can imagine there being a chunk of ace king offsuit here with and without a spade, aces, king queen that pretty much check this river all the time. Yeah. We also have to remember that we are shoving for 100 big blinds here pretty much, which is a pretty substantial shove. So they can't just auto call ace, king, queen, aces and stuff like that, I would say. We're going to get a snap called sometimes as well because they should have kings with a spade that checks, I guess. Do you think that this is an under-defended checking range on the river? Do you think this is just weighted hugely towards... It feels like to me that it might be weighted a little bit towards, oh, fuck me, check, rather than, okay, I need to thread this in as a as a trap check kind of thing.
Yeah, so again, like that, man, I'm going to be an open book in this regard because I want to try and give as much value to this content and just, in terms of my perception as a poker player as well. So every time one of these lines happens where they bet the flop, bet the turn, check the river, bet the turn, check the river, etc., they're always going to be a massive overfold, bro. Always, always. Another thing you want to take into account here is how much value I have here too. I have a bunch of 2 pairs. I have a bunch of flushes, bunch of sets, slow played aces, and stuff like that I think can all. Obviously, against this line, I would.
Okay.
Against this line, I would. I'm not going to say I'm going to get caught by many worse hands here, but again, it's just the main thing that you want to take from it in this line, bro, is that they just won't have traps. That you're going to be reopening here a lot thinner than theory would, and you should, by the way. I'm not going to say that's going to be the same kind of application in 4-bet pots as it might be, or sorry, what it might be in single raise pots as it is in this example. Ranges are going to be a lot more condensed in this situation. So I do think the main reason why I jammed here overall is just the amount of value combos I have here versus this check line on the river. It's just ridiculous amounts, 9s, 7s, even 6s with a spade here. I'm going to peel on the flop exploitatively if they ever check the turn. I have jacks in this line. I have probably, queen 10 suited as well. That's going to float with a double gutter. 6x of spades, ace x of spades, man. I have so much value here. Yeah. So much value. So, given that this line will be drastically overfolded, and this is again what I always weigh into these kind of decisions in bigger pots, smaller pots, whatever the case may be. It's how much value I'm going to have in this line and how big of an overfold I know that happens in practice with, average folding frequencies and stuff like that. So, when that that's going to be the tendency from population, these hands that are kind of close between bet and check or the EV might be similar. The knowing that there's going to be a pretty big overfold with these margin and holdings, bro, is always going to be shifted to an all-in or a bet to capitalize on that tendency. Yeah.
Well, I could definitely see that, and I can't see too many reasons to significantly punt this, so I am going to go with no punt. I have to give my score before we see what happens. I do hope you lose, but we're going to go with no punt. I think you've summarized it pretty well, and a really good introduction into maybe some of the differences between metagame and the standard player, if you will.
For sure.
They do call, which can't be good, and we do lose to ace king with a spade. Did they snap this? I
don't think they snapped it. They did take some time, if I remember correctly. This is for sure recent enough, man. Probably in the last 1 to 2 weeks. But again, like that, bro. This is one thing that I always think in these decisions when somebody takes too long or they take a while to decide and they call with a hand like that. It's fine. It's a bluff catcher in this exact situation. Again, I'm not specifically targeting that to fold, but again, when I get called here and I get caught bluffing, and I know in my mind that kind of what I said to you prior in terms of my perception of attacking the overfold and stuff like that. When that happens, okay, I feel a little bit shit, fine. But when you think about how much value you're going to have in this line as well, it just outweighs kind of feeling anyway negative about getting caught bluffing here, because if the shoe is on the other foot here, by the way, where I'm the out of position player here and I bet and I check and let's say a reg jams all in, it's super under bluff, bro.
Yeah.
It's super under bluff. So I don't expect this guy to know that. Again, probably calling ace king here with a spade is completely fine.
Yeah.
I think ace king without is a lot more questionable.
Yeah.
But as I said, man, I'm going to have a bunch of value in this line, so I really, really don't mind turning this into a bluff.
Yeah, when you get called by this, I guess you don't mind it. There's a few things you can get called by here and be like, that's probably against this guy, not very good, but this doesn't seem like one of those. So, regardless of the money that you've lost, you are 1-0 up in the game. And we're going to go and take hand number 2. You ready?
Go for it.
Okay, with Alan up 1-0, we are taking hand number 2, and that is aces. And we are going to see an open from under the gun. We are pretty deep here.
Aye.
So I'll put it into big blinds, guys, just briefly so you know. We are 250 deep. I don't know if anyone else struggles with that. I know it's 200 now, but for some reason I can't do it.
I hate it, man.
I like to put the money there for the pain. We can do it in big blinds if you like, if that's easier for you.
No. I think for the content, it might be better. It's just, again, my perception is it's always in big blinds because of some confusion between sides and pre-flop, post-flop, etc.
I might go between the two. Anyway, we go for 13. Any notes on if it's obviously you've got people behind you that aren't super deep. Is there any notes on whether you'd make this bigger or smaller, or what are you thinking as you enter into this?
So like, again, one of those things, man, that when I reviewed this hand, I did say that immediately from pre-flop that I definitely should have made this bigger or deeper. And I think like probably 4.5x is usually going to be this 3-bet size in here. So, you know, it's just, you don't want to give a good price to like these kind of pairs and just like hands in general that have like, you know, good pot odds to call when you're that much deeper as well. So, you know, definitely prefer 3-betting bigger here for sure.
Not the end of the world. We'll skip over it and flop top set. Seems good. They check, and I think we just want to go ahead and bet small. Can't see any reason to anything else.
The thing is, in these situations, man, like there's probably some like, you know, 40-50% sizings being used here with some combos, or maybe some mixed strategy between small and medium. Sure. But obviously with this hand, man, like, you know, blocking so much the continuing range for the most part in terms of the strongest hand he's going to have. I probably just simplify to range betting here, or just a high frequency bet for small most of the time.
I'm not going to disagree with that. We do go pretty small. Are you concerned that you might not be able to get this in over 3 streets? You're not really thinking about that if you use this sizing.
So again, like that, man, this is something that I'm not well versed on, and I think a lot of population are not well versed on, like, you know, 150 big blind play, let alone anything deeper. Maybe if you're a live player, you're going to have a lot more kind of, you know, intuitive feel in some situations. Again, with this combo, I think just betting small makes the most sense, bro. For the reasons I mentioned in terms of like blocking so much the continuing range. The thing is, I like in this situation, I don't mind the flop strategy and kind of keeping it simplified. Yeah. And then on like, you know, turn and river is where you can start like really, really polarizing in terms of sizing. So that's kind of my perception for future streets. Flop, I'm not 100% sure on, but again, that's what I think is correct.
Seems good. We do get a call. I mean, it's not what you absolutely love to see, is it? We'd much rather have still had the nuts, but we are going to be betting the turn. I mean, I can't see any reason not to continue betting. We can obviously still bet call, not hugely happily, but we are going to still bet call. Sizing here, like somewhere near pot.
Yeah, so this is again, man, where inexperience for these kind of deeper stacks. Like my heuristic is usually on these kind of straight completing turns where both in position and out of position potentially have some nuts here. Obviously, I have a lot more combos of king queen off here than he will, but he will have combos of king queen suited. So again, not saying it's a mistake to go pot size here. Again, I think at these stack sizes, it makes a lot more sense to polarize here now. But I think you just end up going for a 40% sizing, man, because that's usually my default strategy when these straight completes on the turn or when a flush completes in the turn and stuff like that. So yeah, probably a mistake in terms of stack depths and stuff like that. As I said, I kind of treat this like, again, I know we're not 100 big blinds deep, but kind of keep the same heuristics on these kind of turn cards and stuff like that.
Yep. I mean, I'd bet probably bigger, but
yeah,
it's what it is. It's not going to get you a punt, so we do see call. The river's a 6 of diamonds, and they donk. Okay, so this just seems wrong.
This is the thing, man. I've never been in this spot before, bro.
Yeah, so
and like when I see people do this, sorry not to interrupt you, but when I see people do this, bro, it's either like, imagine spending time studying this node, like hijack under the gun. I had him marked as a reg, yeah, when he was a new player in the pool. I forget what his username was now, to be honest with you, but definitely a guy that I hadn't played. Like, I played a decent amount of 200 Russian cash, for example, and this is from that. And, you know, you do notice when new players do come into the pool, bro. Either untagged or, you know, you just recognize them pretty swiftly. And this guy was one of those guys. So, like, again, just going back to imagine spending any time on this node where you're playing under the gun against the hijack in a check call, donk line. The reason why I'm talking about this is because there's times like this where I see this line happen in practice where I'm like, this has to be some sort of bot here or possibility of it or some very questionable play, because again, maybe it's just lack of experience for me not knowing that this might be a possibility, but it's such a rare node to have awareness on to implement in practice, no?
I mean, I just don't think this. I would assume every time I see this guy is just going to be a fish.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's correct, but I don't think they've spent any time looking at this before. Obviously, we know that donks are born of cards that change things drastically in the favor of the donker, and this obviously doesn't do that. So, you know, it shouldn't be a thing in my mind. Although some people might say otherwise, and this is obviously a bit of a nuanced spot. We're very, very deep, etc., whatever. But I would just expect King Queen if it. I mean, is this really what I think something like King Queen would do? Like, because I know the direction this is obviously going in. Is this really something I expect King Queen to do? Wouldn't it just check raise? Wouldn't it donk, you know, bigger? Is it really going to do this? I have no idea. We have to raise, and something not all in is is definitely what we have to do.
What do you think of the raise sizing? Because I had some back and forth with this with a couple of people as well.
I'd probably go smaller, but like I don't think it matters too much. I'd assume this is a fish based on line, like pretty often. Therefore, I would likely try and be as greedy as possible, just because I think that it's, you know, they're going to get sticky. They're going to think, oh, I bet small. Maybe they're attacking that, etc., etc. I don't think it matters too much as long as you put a good load of money in here. Now, yeah, they're all in for a bag. And we've got 300 left. Yeah, it's pretty gross. Okay, so obviously you've never been in this spot before. I've certainly not been in this spot before. What are your initial thoughts before I...
Cry me a river immediately. Yeah, like this is kind of going back to what I was saying, bro, that like how can someone find a bluff here is damn near impossible.
Yeah.
I can't see a bluff here. I really, really can't. In terms of just going back to what you said about what was my initial thoughts, is like, okay, because I was streaming when this happened, by the way, as well, for table and whatnot. And, you know, these are things that can definitely, and because you're giving up EV when you're streaming anyways, bro. We spoke about this in the podcast anyways, that like, you know, if some lad sees me folding here, I mean, I don't want to kill the hand now, but you guys know that it happened anyways. It's a really, really tough spot, man. And, you know, for somebody to find a donk 3-bet jam here, like they would have to do this with like Queen 10, King Jack.
Yeah, but the donk just makes no sense. Like if they check shoved, I'd be like, okay, I can see like people getting through to here with King Jack, King 10, you know, Queen 10, stuff like this. But the donk is like, I think, does it not just like eliminate a lot of those things? Like, why would you ever bet those hands on river? It's almost like you're trying to manufacture this exact situation. Yeah, but I am surprised not to see King Queen raise the turn though. If that is indeed what it is, because they are saying.
I think against the sizing I use, bro, I think they're going to be for sure incentivized to start building the pot there immediately.
Yeah.
Thinking about it now, like, you know, as I said, to find the check call, and then donk in this situation. As I said, I've had this back and forth with a couple of people with this hand, and there's been really like mixed, you know, perceptions and whatnot. My only kind of doubt in this hand, and I just don't think, but I could be wrong in this, man. I'm gonna leave this up to you whether you do X or Y in terms of like what you end up thinking it is. But the main thing on the river here, does he like 3-bet jam worse? Like if he has the 9s or he has the 10s or he has the jacks, does he really 3-bet jam this when I'm still uncapped with King Queen?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it'd have to be a really big whale. Unless we had some information that they're a big whale, I think it's very obvious that 10s is pretty much effectively bluff catching. Maybe you do, maybe like 10s just snaps because you can have 9s. But the donk's really throwing me off. But like, I just cannot understand why you wouldn't check raise the turn if you had King Queen in this spot this deep. It just seems like an absolutely mandatory and the most natural thing to do. It feels really harsh to punt this though, because you are folding. The odds we're getting are pretty good as well, by the way. How often do we need to win here? Like not super often. If we don't know the player, usually I flick it in, just be like, you know.
See, this another thing is like this. There was a couple of hands I remember previously that he kind of called 3-bets in position, right, as well. So it's like he did some of these lines as well, bro, that kind of left my head kind of scratching, or like, you know, whatever kind of, you know, way it made me think. So
I just think I would call, but I would be very upset.
I don't know, man. This is why I said it's been back and forth here. I would take the punt here for this one.
I'm going to give you the punt. Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to give you the punt, but only because I would flick it in, because if someone's doing erratic stuff and I'm not sure what they are and I haven't seen them very often, I'm just not prepared to fold this hand to them. But I honestly can not for a second really say too much about. I'm not going to criticize it. I mean, I love folding the river. But,
if you had 9s, 10s, or jacks yourself here, well, we'll say 9s or 10s.
They were all the same, I think. Like it's just a matter of whether does he ever like block the river with like ace queen and then 3-bet shove. You know,
well, that's the thing. We blocked the combo so heavily here as well. That should be more of a reason to possibly call based on that tendency.
Yeah. Exactly.
Disgusting though.
Yeah,
disgusting.
Super gross. We are going to punt it, but like I honestly, I have absolutely no idea. And the less said about this hand, the better, I think. I hope I'm never in this situation. Anyway, so we're 1-1. Yeah, I mean that one I could have gone either way. It's hard with folds like to say, oh, that's a punt, because like obviously people are generally under bluffing, and this is just completely gnarly. But you know, I think just the fact that it's just, you said he's done some erratic stuff, I'd probably just flick it in and hope they're just all over the place. Anyway, let's go and take hand number 3. It's 1-1, Alan, and you're looking for it to take the lead again. Let's have a look. Okay, so hand number 3, 7-5 of spades. We got an. Is this an ante or a splash pot?
Yeah. So this is a splash pot on Russian cash as well.
Right. So you're going to have to help me out here, man, because I have no clue. But I know there's a lot of limping. I've never played a splash pot in my life. I think I played one maybe like 10 years ago on Carbon Poker. Do you remember Carbon Poker?
Just about.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Since then, I can't think of. I don't even have a GG account. So we are limping, which I can't imagine is bad, and we won't. I mean, unless you want to say something about splash pot meta before we get to the flop.
I mean, my overall strategy here, man, again, as I said, open book and whatnot, the under the gun and hijack here, I'm probably like limping my, not entire range, but like any hand that you would imagine is going to be, you know, a raise or something like that. I think like in these splash pots in under the gun and hijack, you don't really want to raise too often, even though I did see some pre-flop sims for kind of Russian cash splash pots for like 10 and 20. There is some raising, but I think...
Fucking hell, game's dead if you're simming this shit.
Yeah, for sure. But, you know, people get severely out of line, man. Let's say if you limp under the gun and hijack, they get really, really out of line with like jamming super wide.
Right.
So I think the EV of like limp and strong hands and in positions is kind of a no-brainer based on that tendency.
Okay.
And I've seen some ridiculous shit as well, man. Like, it's not like I'm basing this on a hunch. I've seen ridiculous stuff. So in terms of just the limp and pre-flop, man, like on the button here, I think I did a sweat session review for somebody there recently in this exact same situation. If I've 7-4 offsuit here, I'm limping the button as well. Like I'm really, really wide, man. There's 20 big blinds or 10 big blinds of dead money in the middle here.
Yeah.
You know, you just get good odds with any sort of hand. With the limp option is the main thing.
Makes sense for sure. We flop a pair, and it checks through to us. Yeah, see, like, I'm in no man's land here. I can see betting being fine, and I can see checking being as good. I don't really care what you do. You decide to bet, seems fine. Knocking out some equity, you know, we might have the best hand. We're 5-handed, so I don't know how often people are like shoving like sixes and small blind choosers or whatever. I don't know. We do get rid of a few people, which is, you know, somewhat positive, and I can't say it's bad. So then it checks to us on the turn, and my instinct is to check. Do you want to talk about why you might not want to check if I am picking up where this is going?
I mean, you're thinking along the same lines as I am, man, here. Like, just in terms of the flop there, like, I think it's just like, you know, just get people out of the hand, define people's ranges and all that jazz. More or less exactly what you said. And I think on the turn as well, bro, like, you know, I'm still ahead of some ranges here, like 4x, 3x. You know, some you know, open-ended straight draws and shit like that. So not a hand you just want to be ballooning the pot here.
So
you know, overall.
Back. Do you think that, like, after flop action 5-way, people are like quite capped here or not?
I think. Well, we're going to find out on the river what I really think about that, by the way. But
fair enough.
You know, for sure on this texture, I think they can still be uncapped on a really, really dry texture. Two-tone boards, more dynamic textures, man. I could see a little bit more fast play going on. But yeah.
Fair enough. We river a 5, so this is probably quite good for us. And it goes check again. And we have a pretty mandatory value bet for like 2/3 or something, I guess. Maybe bigger, I'm not really sure. But this is completely fine. But because it's punt or no punt, I imagine, that we're going to see that. So obviously, if this guy calls, we fold. But we do now have a decision for everything. And that obviously the part on the flop, like how often is someone only calling versus a tiny bet with 4 people behind them with like a set of 4s or 5-4, or, you know, would they shove? I mean, I guess they can have 6-3. I can't see why they wouldn't have 6-3. What do you think? Generally speaking, like obviously having experience with splash, but I'm just thinking intuitively, like what kind of thing I would expect to see, and I'd expect to see mostly check raise with things that we're currently losing to. But pocket nines makes a decent amount of sense, unless that's something that people just jam pre.
Yeah. So that's for sure out of his range, especially in the small blind there, and in like 9s or arguably pocket 4s as well. I think again like that's what I mean. Like people are going to get severely out of line here, just trying to take down the dead money in the middle pre-flop. But this is going back to what we kind of spoke about on the turn, bro, that like, I'll tell you this much. In this moment, I was thinking that they're just capped on the flop.
Okay.
But after kind of going back and forth with this hand history with some of the guys in Metagame and just like talking about this hand in general, I kind of came to the conclusion that it's just not the case. But at the same time, going back to what I was specifically thinking in this situation, is like, okay, like, can he jam worse 5x here? Does he check another 5 on the river? Does he really slow play like 4s on the flop, pocket 2s on the flop? My perception is here that, like, this was against an aggressive reg, by the way, also, which is important to take into account in terms of, like, you know, again, like that, man, like, you know, someone with a higher woman's soft flop is going to be more capable of doing something out of line, or, you know, I'm not saying my range is capped here, for sure, but, like, you know, the thing is in this line as well, from an exploit standpoint, I'm going to be trying to steal this pot quite a bit. If it checks through on the flop, or sorry, you know, take the stab on the turn, on the flop, checks through on the turn, and I have the option to bluff this on the river, I will always do that. You know, right. If I have some like naked queen high, king high, whatever sort of random BS that I might have here, I'm going to play it the exact same way. Okay, so whether they know that or not, I think when I decide to reopen here on the river, I think it's a great spot to turn some 4x or 2x into a bluff. But again, this is going back to what I was saying, that I had the strong intention that they are capped, that given it was 5-way on the flop, that I think if people had sets or straights, that they're just going to start piling money in, or at least go for a smaller raise, and, you know, just kind of not turn their hand face up, but, like, you know, just try and get money in the pot. So I'm thinking that, like, this guy, given his profile, given his potential tendencies, I think this mofo is just going to be turning some 2x or 4x into a bluff here, or some 3x blocker, or something like that. I didn't really think there was a strong possibility of this guy having a better hand, is the main thing.
Yeah. I mean, 4x and 2x into... I mean, I guess that makes sense, but, like, do you not really... Like, how good of a blocker is a 4 or a 2 for them? Like, you're not going to check back the turn with 5-4 or pocket 4s or pocket 2s. So, like, is that really something that they would want to shove with here?
I think it's, like, as I said, with the specific flop texture, man, I think they can call, like, you know, king X, or it's not like 4x of diamonds, 4x of clubs with backdoors, especially against a small sizing as well. Maybe it's just a case that I'm giving this guy too much credit here in that regard, but I do think, like, if I'm in the small blind there with, like, 2x, 4x, and, you know, with backdoors, you know, backdoor flush draw, my overcard is going to be clean as well most of the time too. I'm for sure peeling one versus bet small, for sure. I think we have to. Again, like that, this is going to be, like, my perception. That's not going to be the case for everyone else. And, you know, maybe at this point, I'm just trying to justify what potentially happened here and shit like that. But
I think I'm ready to make a decision. So my inclination is that you very, very credibly have chunks of 5x here.
Yeah.
How likely do I think it is that someone's going to try to get you to fold that, given that they know that you know about them, most likely? I think it's probably, in that sense, underbluffed, and I don't see, like, what naturally, like, I'm not sure what they want to have a 4 or a 2. Like, I'm not sure how much sense that makes to bluff with. I think. And because their line is just, like, it's just so, like, they check call tiny and then check. Like, it's almost like I just don't expect someone. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, my instinct is I just don't think someone bluffs here, but I don't play splash pots. But for the sake of not spending another 5 minutes looking at this spot and scrambling my brain, I'm just going to give you a punt. Even though I don't know what's about to happen, but my thought is that you're going to lose here a lot.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. If I had to classify this hand in hindsight, I would put it as a punt as well.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. They can just have a 5 as well, right? They can easily have a 5. We call, and they do have 6-3 offsuit, which I'm happy with that. I haven't seen it before, guys, but yeah, I was thinking 6-3 suited, but yeah, 6-3 seems like completely reasonable.
But it makes total sense as well, to be fair, like with the smooth call on the flop, and you know, to take the passive line again on the river, like unblocking so much to, like, 5x and stuff like that, for sure makes sense. Yeah.
And if they have offsuit 3-6, then they just have shitloads of hands, especially if they're slow playing.
Just want to repeat that as well, man. Like, against, like, the vast majority of population here on these games, never ever call it here. This is a very specific situation where, you know, arguably give this guy, well, he has a woman avatar, so I could be wrong in terms of, like, you know, giving them a male or female tag, whatever. But in general, like, this is kind of the exception that I will make in this spot. Like, you know, that they will potentially do what I kind of mentioned previously. But
Yeah, nice one, mate. It's really well adjusted.
It looks great when it doesn't, and vice versa when it doesn't.
True. Well, you are down 2-1, which means you need to win both the next two hands in order to avoid a defeat in punt or no punt. Are you ready to level up the scores?
I am ready, bro.
Let's take hand number 4. Hand number 4, ace, queen of diamonds. You need this one, Alan. No pressure. We are a little bit deeper than 100 here with our opponent. We are going to 3-bet to 10. Big blinds, that is. And they are going to call. Nothing to say, Alan. I've nothing to say.
Yeah. Nothing else.
And we flop 2 pair. I want to see bet small. Looked good. And they raise. So I know how unhappy I am here, generally speaking. How unhappy, or like if you had ace queen of spades, you'd be a lot less happy. But like obviously you have boat outs, and obviously you have backdoor, and obviously you have, you know, stuff going on. 2 pair. What do you expect their range to look like here that raises in position?
Okay, so should I let you know what type of profile this is?
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
Okay, so against the reg here, bro, I'm already looking for a rope to find my way out. Put it that way. But against the recreational here, which it is in this example,
this is a Saulo spot.
I'm just rubbing my hands here, very happily. Okay, very very happily.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, I don't know if you want to explain this or should I do it, but Saulo made a dedicated video of 3-bet pots against fish, where when the fish raises in position, when you see bet, you literally call and then call and then call and never do anything else. And some of if you haven't seen that, I wonder if I can get it and put it in the description. If you haven't seen that video, it's some of the wildest shit I've ever seen. Yep. And the propensity at which he wins with the most garbage hands, much worse than this hand, by the way, is unbelievable. So I have a feeling that we are probably, I'm glad that you brought this hand along, because I actually, in a top 10 recently, had a hand where I finally fucking got somebody doing this. I called so many people down this line before I actually got somebody.
Just to add to that as well, bro, like, you know, in terms of bluff catching against regs in particular, like, you're going to lose more times than win. Like, that's just a normal, but like, you know, we'll say like in a certain line, we'll say if this against a reg profile in this line, again, you probably maybe know what's going to happen in general in this situation. But like, you know, versus a reg here, this is going to be very, very under bluff, where like, you know, for most sizing on the river, there's going to be probably a 5 to 8% on the bluff in terms of composition. Okay. So if they go like bet 70 or something like that, they need to have like 31, 32% weak bluffs or just weak composition, and they might have like 25 or something like that. So that's how that kind of operates in terms of range composition by the river. But when you're talking about this line, there's one thing that I want to highlight as well that I think is super fucking important for people when they're playing against recreationals, is that when they are the caller, they will always over bluff, or their bluffing tendencies by the river is going to be insane. Okay. The reason why this happens, bro, as well, is simply because of when they open pre-flop, they don't like to fold to 3-bets. That's why this happens. That they arrive too wide of a range post-flop. It's not like they overfold on the flop versus a bet or anything like that, but like they'll overcall hands that are already that they shouldn't have. They'll arrive on a future street and be forced to bluff. Okay. That's primarily why this happens. So whether it's like the raise bet line, or the call bet line in 3-bet pots, it's all down to their pre-flop tendency of just overcalling when they raise first in. Like, you know, I'll give you one example. Say they open under the gun and you 3-bet from the button, or you 3-bet from the blinds, and you know GTO is going to defend like 50 to 60% in terms of like, you know, calling frequency. Fish are like 25 to 30% on average when they're under the gun, when they're in position and out of position. Right. So again, like that, you can imagine that like in most, because fish aren't positionally aware as well. You know, they like a hand, they play a hand. Yeah. Doesn't matter what position, doesn't matter what stack size, doesn't matter anything. Fish will always have the same tendencies, whether you're playing 2NL all the way up to 5KNL. Because, you know, it's no different than that. Humans are humans at the end of the day, bro. So if you're on about a specific profile, fish are fish, regardless of what stake, they share the same tendencies. Yeah. Okay. So we've established that how this is going to go. But like this, I'm glad that this is the turn, because like if it had bricked off, obviously we're just calling and hating our lives anyway against Rex. Yeah. But this is a classic example, I imagine, of exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about. You just never. Are you in the mode of once you see flop raise, you're literally calling down? It doesn't matter what you see. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, because it's just like it's just numbers at the end of the day, bro. Yeah. Like we have. You know, information, we'll say, on certain spreadsheets for multiple different board textures and you know, certain runouts and stuff like that, man. And it doesn't matter against this profile. It just does not matter. Like the weak composition and the EV of like calling down blindfolded here in these situations is just like insane, man. Insane.
So we do call. This is like the nut low run out still, and this is probably going to be like exactly what, I mean, for anyone that doesn't understand this concept or hasn't studied or hasn't heard about, the exploit that Salah did in his video, this is going to look fucking awful. And like, if I didn't know this stuff, you'd be working really fucking hard to convince me that this isn't horrendous. And then I would press this button and look like an idiot when we're shown the inevitable dog shit from imposition.
Just to add to an extra layer of ease in terms of doing this as well, man. Like, I wanted to bring along one of these examples just to highlight this. Like, this call bet line, raise bet line in this exact situation. Like, both compositions or both situations in terms of like what the river range looks like on the vast majority of runouts is just extremely, extremely overbluffed. But the main thing that I always kind of, when I coach guys and just kind of, again, I show them the numbers to, validate their own biasness or their uncertainty, dissonance, etc. But in this situation, man, fish just don't value jam thin enough also. That's another thing to take into account. Like, what a fish will end up doing here in this line is probably turn like Jack X into a bluff here, or Queen X into a bluff, or some merged BS that they decide to raise and do X, Y, and Z with. Like, for sure, like, even me being with Metagame for as long as I have been, I'm not like, I can't wait to call this down. It's going to be so much fun. If this happens on 500 NL or 1K NL, bro, I'm not exactly like, I can't wait to see the showdown. Of course, there's some like uncertainty and like, little bit of like, how can you have a bluff here and stuff like that. But honestly, man, Jesus, I don't know. Like, I'm never folding like Ace X here. Arguably like, King X, I think if we have King X, well, King X of hearts is a flush, obviously. But you get my point here, bro. Like, I'm overcalling here drastically.
I mean, you're gonna lose it sometimes. Obviously, you're gonna lose it sometimes.
But like, this is what I want to mention as well, bro. That like, even though this will be overbluffed for this sizing on the river. What was the sizing all in? Just out of curiosity.
Like 80.
Yeah, so it's like a pot size. Yeah, so about the 70%, 70-80%. So like, this has to be around 33-34% weak.
Yeah,
and probably in practice is going to look like 45 to 50, maybe a little bit more than 50 on average. Could be actually a little bit higher. But what I mean by that is like, they're going to be bluffing half the time here, but you're still going to lose half the time as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the extra amount of the possibility of, just overcalling any bluff catcher hand. That's where the EV comes from because of this tendency for the most part.
Yeah. And if you only need to win about 30% of the time and you think they're 45% weak, then, that's just maths. So
Exactly.
I can't pump this, man. Obviously, I know I've heard about this before. I was blown away when I originally saw this. So I can't punt it, which means it's 2-2. And we are going to take the last hand, which is at 500 now. Are you ready for the decider?
Indeed, mate.
Let's go. Right, it's hand number 5. Alan needs it. Will he get it? We are 100 big blinds deep at 500 NL, just so everyone's clear. And we're opening to 2x, which we are going to leave. We have mixes between call and 4-bet. Agreed?
Agreed, yeah. Agreed.
We call. No problem. We'll leave that alone. Oh, I'm excited. Jack 5, and we are going to see small. So, I can see all things being fine, potentially. I could be convinced of all things. But all three things also feel bad. So, what are your thoughts of this situation? I mean, I guess calling is my safest bet. What do you think?
Right. So yeah, like, if there's one thing that I like to do in each hand, man, is have the initiative.
Okay.
And in these formations, like, there's one thing that people don't do enough is punish people that are c-betting too much.
Yeah.
In this situation, like, I'm sure you've seen, some node locking and stuff like that on certain boards in this situation as the out of position pre-flop caller, on boards where people are just c-betting too high of a frequency, man. You're supposed to check raise a bunch. Check raise a bunch with like any sort of like, even 5x here is going to check raise against somebody that's, just for, protection, equity denial, all the same usual stuff. And I do think that people are just going to be c-betting too often here. I have 2 overs, backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, unbelievable blockers to Jack X as well, which is very important. I think if the Jack of clubs or anything like that was on the flop, I think I would actually just call Well, I'm disregarding the 5 of clubs. If I had the jack of clubs, there's going to be a flush draw there. But I just, like, again, I think this board texture with these blockers to the jack X is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But just going back to your question, I'm never folding here. I'm never folding here for sure. If he had bet half pot, I think I would fold against the more kind of versus bet medium. But for sure, from an exploit standpoint, bro, I'm not sure what the bet fold frequency looks like here, but it's just more so from the study that I've done with like node lock and man against people that just see betting too high of a frequency. And by the way, I don't think this is a mistake to see bet range in this board here. I think it's completely fine. Most of the time, whether you go for a half pot bet here or bet small, I think EV is minuscule in terms of, exactly. So, you know, I'm not saying check raise in this combo is going to be a high frequency thing. A lot of the time when I'm playing, bro, and it's probably to my own detriment at times where I'm very instinctive. And, you know, any kind of content that I've done with people before, whether it's the podcast and stuff like that you and I did, I always bring up that topic of intuition. And, you know, sometimes I'm going to be wrong, sometimes I'm going to be right. And, you know, when I'm doing it on the fly, where I don't have access to this exact node that might be over or under a bluffed or anything like that, because that's what you kind of study off the table. I kind of just roll with it, bro. And I don't really, I'm not going to say I don't use an RNG. Sometimes I will do it maybe against certain regs that justify having that kind of, you know, RNG kind of decision based, whatever. But against other guys, man, where I know they have post-flop tendencies that they're overfolded in certain lines, I for sure just like basing my decision on that kind of tendency itself. So, you know, never folding here. I think calling is fine. I think raising is fine.
Okay. And as we've discussed, it sounds like we are raising, which I can get on board with. I can definitely see the advantages of if we're getting overfolds, then that's great. And if we do get continues, it's not like we don't have things going on. So we do see continue and the turns the 8 of clubs, which is some of the hope that we are looking for. And I guess out of position, we don't really just mind going ahead and continuing to barrel this. Like in position, maybe we want to check something like this back just to make sure we don't waste our equity, but that's not really a thing out of position, is it?
For sure you want to check here sometimes, bro. I think possibly checking. No, if I had like ace queen of clubs, I think that can check raise the flop as well for the same reason I mentioned with the blockers, the jack ace. I think I would check call that hand more often on the turn. Yeah. Because I'm still ahead of some of his floats in the flop. It might be a little bit mediocre in thinking that, but I do know the heuristic most of the time with the kind of, I don't know, I'm not going to have ace king of clubs here much, if ever, I don't think. But, you know, having the strong ace high kind of, you know, paired card along with that, like ace king, ace queen, stuff like that. You know, you can definitely take a more passive line with them. Yeah. Because like that, man, if you bet these hands and get jammed on, it's a pretty big disaster in terms of like, you know, getting your equity denied. Yeah. And you could still be ahead of some of the stabbing range or the floating range on the flop itself. Even if this didn't come a flush draw, by the way, I think still barreling this hand will be fine. Okay. For the reasons I mentioned with the heavily blocking the jack X itself with the king of clubs and the queen of clubs. At least this was my perception. I just want to highlight as well, I have not reviewed this hand in GTO or anything like that. So this is just me completely winging this every now and again where I'm like, you know, let's just see what happens. And you know, the thing is when you're playing higher games, bro, and just like whatever stake in general, you can't be afraid to look stupid. Yeah. In my opinion, you got to be willing to let people know, and I'm not saying this from an ego standpoint, it's just like you got to let people know that you are capable of doing stuff. Yeah. Because it's worked back and forth in my favor between, you know, getting bluff catched pretty aggressively, but also going razor thin where people overcall, you know, zero EV hands itself. So I do think I end up betting here. I forget what sizing I did. Maybe it was like 40%. Yeah, half pot seems okay. Yeah, I don't think there's much else to say about that on the turn. Yep.
Luckily for you, you're talking to someone that is also completely no idea what's going on in theory here. So we're in intuition land. I mean, the one thing that Jared always said to me was to trust my instincts. So I don't have a problem with going with that.
There's one thing I want to say to that as well, bro, because as I said, I'm a strong advocate for this kind of intuition-based kind of decision. Like, I think when it comes to bluff catching, from my perspective, I'm a strong believer in that. Yeah. You know, with somewhat relevant kind of good range analysis and stuff like that, you know, you can piece together what you think somebody is possible or you know, capable of in terms of bluffing. Yeah. And a lot of the time, bro, no joke, and this is, again, MDA knowledge, people don't bluff in big pots, genuinely. Mm-hmm. Like, most regs do not bluff in big pots in like continued lines of aggression, and it's sad, but it's true. Yeah. You know, so as I said, I always in the back of my mind, bro, I don't want to be one of those guys. Yeah. I don't want to be a spew-tard by any means, but at the same time, I don't want to be one of those guys overall.
Well, let's see which it is. The 3 of spades rolls off on the river. I mean, when you look at this now, like, do you think that I think that there's two things going on. Obviously, we're very in love with our Jack X blockers, as you've said already. They have now, filtered a few times at least.
Yeah.
What do you think their range looks like? I mean, it looks pretty damn strong, their range, if you ask me. I don't think they're going to have, do you think they're going to have, pocket tens here?
I do think there's a possibility of it for sure. I do think so. I do think for the half pot sizing on the turn, I don't think it's going to be, massively plus EV, but it's just going to be, again, I'm not all about MDF and all that stuff, bro. Oh, you have to call this and you have to call that. But I do think on the turn line with 10s and 9s and stuff like that, you do have to call, for sure. Especially versus the half pot sizing. I think it's fine. Probably going to be a call fold spot, by the way, versus population, if you had them 9s and 10s.
Yeah.
But, the main thing that I'm thinking here is just, I have fallen in love with the Jack X blocker. That's exactly what happened here. Now, in saying that, blocking folds with clubs is not good. You know, because he's going to float the ace queen of clubs, the ace king of clubs, not king jack of clubs, king 10 of clubs. I think is fine to bet small, call a raise with the backdoors as well. Queen 10 of clubs, I think is a fine float in the flop as well. So we do have bad blockers here, bro, in terms of blocking the folding range. Also, blocking kings and queens is also not what you want to be doing here.
You want to fold that here? You expect them to fold that?
It's going to be 0 EV for sure, bro. Again, if the shoe is on the other foot here and I've got queens or kings and someone check raises bets in this line, it's not an easy call, bro. Again, it's going to be very profile dependent if they're aggressive enough to justify it. But man, think about it this way. Who is going to find the right amount of bluffs here? In this line.
When I see 3 of spades here, I'm like, this has got to be underbluffed to shit.
This is the thing. This is the thing.
One interesting thing I might just briefly ask about is that when you shove here, which is I assume what you've done because you brought it, and I'm the guy in position here. I want to have. I'm thinking, okay, if I have kings with a club and a diamond, I'm going to call that because I double block the Jack X. How much do you have to weigh that up against the fact that if you're playing against someone like you that's in love with the Jack X blocker, you're also therefore blocking bluffs with it? Is that, I've never really gone to that realm before because I never really experienced anyone blasting off here with that. But
it's just one of those things, man, where this line in general, and actually by a good chunk as well, is going to be pretty underbluffed in these formations. On average, the thing is what we're doing in metagame as of late, we're really categorizing certain reg profiles by one win soft flop and what the more passive guys look like in certain lines, what's the kind of medium regs look like in certain lines, and then the very aggressive legs, what they look like in certain lines as well. So against population, man, any kind of overpair here or anything like that is going to be 0 EV. You have to understand as well, when people check raise on these boards, man, they're just not check raise and wide enough as well. Yeah. They're going to be very equity driven that, even if it is the case where they have, picked up some flush draw and they decide to just give up on the river, because that's what will happen against population. They will just check raise a hand that makes sense. They pick up the equity and then they just decide to give up on the river when they don't improve. Standard ABC kind of stuff, and not really trying to piece together, oh, well, he has 9s, he has 10s, he still has some kind of call fold here. As I said, I would rather bluff 9-10 of clubs here if I decide to check raise that on the flop than have king queen of clubs here. So man, it's really there's one thing I want to mention as well, and I think this is super good, and Saulo said this to me before as well, man, that you just don't want to bluff into a strong range when there's so much more EV to be made by attacking discontinued lines, or when you're talking about wider ranges in general. And you said it yourself, man, that it's been fairly filtered at this point.
It's my biggest concern.
Yeah, this is the thing, and that should be a very strong consideration in these lines where it's it doesn't matter 3-bet pot, check raise, bet. It's no different than, say, you bet small in the flop and you go for a fucking 2x pot size overbet on the turn. Yeah. And their range is extremely filtered by the river in that, in a double barrel line there. And it's the same thing in any situation, bro. It's when the range is, like you said, filtered so much, you really don't want to get out of line in terms of trying to make people fold. And again, that, if you have the aggressive image that I also have on top of that, which pros and cons to my benefit, you kind of don't want to overdo it. But the main thing, I mean, this is going to be a close one between punt and punt, but a punt or no punt, in my opinion. But maybe if your mind made up already, I don't know. But the main reason why I followed through here, man, is just the Jack X blockers, where I just thought like I can put a lot of pressure on kings and queens, but I think this is probably still a punt, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of my overall perception, bro. That's my overall perception in this line.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've gone back and forth on this one. It's hard to say if you're...
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm back and forth all the time as well, man.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I want this to be able to be good, but I think in practice, it's probably not good. Is my... Against someone that goes call. If they know who you are as well, I mean, I think this is going to be pretty disastrously overcalled if they know who you are, as well as... Because if I'm playing against someone from Metagame, I'll just be like, yeah. So, like, I don't know.
It gets a lot easier. It gets a lot easier to click the call button, man. That's for sure.
So I don't know, like...
By the way, this line will not be overfolded by any means.
Yeah.
Like, when this is usually the tendency where it might be overfolded by a certain percent on certain runouts and stuff like that. When that is the case, like, blockers and unblockers are very, very important. You know, the thing is, in some lines, man, where you're talking about, like, I don't know, 12 to 15% overfold, that's when blockers just go out the window. You can bluff everything.
Yeah.
You know, and this for sure will not be in any way, shape, or form drastically overfolded, if even overfolded at all. Potentially overcalled in this exact size and sequence and board. You don't know for sure.
Yeah. I guess yes, the blockers to the jackets are good. I'll make a decision. Yes, the blockers to the jackets are good, but we block pretty much the only auto folds I can see.
Yeah.
And then pretty much everything else can call at some frequency. Pretty much everything else they have is bluff catching. Like that, you could say the same for ace king of clubs, to be fair, but you know, that I'd have hope to fold out. Like king, queen 10 of clubs, you know, obviously we'd beat that, but queen 10 of clubs would also fold. Like ace queen of clubs for sure. I could hope to auto fold, maybe. But like my biggest problem is we're bluffing into a range of hands that can all pretty much call and be like, okay, I think they could convince themselves to call with pretty much anything that they end up here with. And for that reason, I'm out. For that reason, I'm gonna go for a punt. But I do like the heart and the commitment to the game. You get a heart commitment stamp. Yeah. In reality, though, you've lost. Which is far more important, by the way. In reality, we have lost, and when you see this, you can sleep at night.
Like as I said, bro, in one of the previous examples, if I get called by this hand, like that is, I am not expecting that to fucking fold. No, you know what I mean. If he called with like 9s or 10s here, I'd have been like,
Yeah, that's bad. Yeah. I would almost prefer to see that. Now we'll kind of never know, but interesting to hear your thoughts in the comments, guys. Yeah. But the hands are very interesting, and I like that you brought on a selection of stuff that's like very metagame and like exploitative driven. Very interesting stuff. And yeah, you have lost 3-2. Let's go into a quick outro and summarize what we've seen. All right, that is it, guys. Alan has lost 3-2, and in true punt or no punt fashion, we like to push a big pile of his money over to our villain. Very solidly lost grand there that we've punted over. Alan, have you had a good time at least? You have lost 3-2. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man, it was great fun. Like, as I said, I was a little bit kind of skeptical that we wouldn't get through the length of time that we have done in terms of like 45 minutes or so. Or 45 minutes plus,
we've gone straight through that. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. But I was a little bit kind of apprehensive that the 5 hands might not be that interesting, bro. But it's always what I noticed from doing hand histories with people in general, that like, oh yeah, you start talking about one street, you spend 5 minutes there, turn, same thing, and next thing you're talking about one hand for like 20-25 minutes. Exactly. But, you know, in the back of my mind, I knew it was going to go this direction of the 3-2. I didn't think it might have been 3-2. I thought it might have been 3-1 or something like that, or, you know, just would have been dead after the fourth hand. Yeah. But we did get it down to the final one, but I knew it was going to go 3-2 after this hand, man. I had it in the back of my mind. But it was a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun. Nice one. I thought I nearly gave this one to you, but I was just thinking about it. And you weren't really, you weren't exactly selling it to me. Yeah. I got to be honest in my perception, man. Like, this last hand is kind of like, I knew it was going to go probably in the opposite of punt. And the thing is, if you said it wasn't, I probably would have convinced you that it was as well. So, you know. Fair enough. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it. If you haven't seen the podcast that me and Alan did on Alan's channel, and you haven't seen any of Alan's channels, then they'll all be in the description below. Go and check them out. But for now, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on doing this. I really, really enjoyed looking at those hands. Super, super interesting. And look forward to working with you again in the future. Likewise, mate. Appreciate your time. And thanks to anyone that's made it this far. GG. All the best, guys. And like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I will see you guys on the next one.